Hi, Coach Steve of Joy and Success Coaching of Philadelphia, and welcome to my channel and to today's video. For today's video, I'm going to be discussing 5 topics that you should consider avoiding discussing on a first date. I'm going to let my alter ego Captain Obvious take over here. Most of these are not rocket science, but I think they are things to consider when you're on a first date. If you're feeling a bit nervous and fishing for something to talk about, these may not be the bait that's going to catch the vibes you want. We're going to start off with the first thing to avoid on a first date. It's a completely boring topic like the weather. So it rained. How about the rain? Oh yeah, and the wind. Yeah, the wind blows. Yeah, this conversation's going nowhere. This is small talk. This is probably not going to elicit any feelings in your date. This is just basically filling dead air with noise. You'd almost be better off making strange animal sounds than talking about something boring like the weather. If they really needed to know the weather, they'd go on Google. They wouldn't go on a date. So avoid conversations that are mundane, tedious, boring, and could probably be Googled. We're going to take us from that to the second thing to avoid is big sad the big sad news of the week, whatever it is, wherever you may be, there's almost certainly a news article. It is not happy, it is not fun, it is not uplifting, it's not going to make your date feel excited. Doesn't matter what time of the year it is, there is almost certainly some big, sad, devastating, catastrophic news story. Even if it is an important current event, you want your date to be fun and to be playful. You don't want it to be full of negative emotions and sadness, so maybe not mention that news article you've seen about that horrible thing that happened that is just full of the negativity and the sadness, because you want to have fun on your date. Having fun and having a good time will probably result in a second date more than them walking away feeling like, wow, that was heavy. Which then takes us to the third topic, a possibly very heavy and sad topic. The ex. Your ex, their ex, doesn't matter. Just don't don't bring that up on a first date. There may be a point in time on a later date where it's worth it to have the information relevant to their dating and romantic past, but on the first date, it's probably better that you get to know each other, not to know the gripes they have about their ex. If the ex comes up, your best bet may be to say something to the effect of, a gentleman doesn't kiss and tell. The last thing you want to do, with no emotional attachment currently built up, is to start telling them about how your ex is this and that and all this horrible stuff and every other name in the book, because they're just going to think, oh, well, if this goes sideways in a month, these will be the same things you say to me or about me to your next partner, then, aren't they? They just have to assume you're negative, you're butthurt, you're bitter, you're miserable, and none of that's going to come off as confident, attractive, ready to move forward with your life. If anything, it seems like you've got a heavy anchor tying you to the past. And it's not to say that your past situation with your ex wasn't possibly very terrible, but that's not something your potentially new dating and romantic partner needs to hear all about on a first date. Which then takes us to our fourth point, even more emotional vomiting and dysfunction. It is very possible that you have had a very rough go of it in life. And it is very possible that some of the things you would want to share with your partner and be vulnerable about are very much worth sharing and being vulnerable about, but not on a first date. If you start your first date off with, oh, it was so tragic, it was so sad, my mom this, my dad that, my uncle this, my neighbors, back when I was 5 years old, picture it like this. If you're going to get up and emotional vomit all your tragic backstory, it would be just as gross as if you just stood up, actually vomited on the dinner table, and then sat back down and said, so, how's your salad? It's not going to go over well. In fact, it's going to go down like a lead balloon, almost certainly. So save all of the tragic stories of your woeful life for a later time when there's enough emotional attachment to begin to be that vulnerable. Don't start your first date off with lots of sad and lots of negative and lots of tragic. Even if it is a true story, it's not going to entice your partner to give them some sympathetic sob story about how you essentially are the perpetual victim of your own existence. It doesn't sound very confident. It doesn't sound very self assured. If anything, you want to turn that around and talk about how it's given you the strength, it's given you the experience, that it's made you a stronger, better, smarter, wiser person. But that is all a spin you could put on it on a later date. Don't start your first date off telling them, woe is me, woe is me. So when are we going to meet again? Because they're probably going to say, no, I don't need this negativity or drama or sadness added to my life. This is not a value added. Which then takes us to what is probably the most obvious thing of all to avoid discussing on a first date with somebody you don't know very well, and that is race, religion, politics. These are all very important topics, and they may help explain to others who you are, what your ideals and values are. They may be things about the ideals and values of your romantic partner that you are interested genuinely in knowing and have a right to know. But you should still make that very first date, that very first time meeting them, maybe off of an app, maybe it's a coworker. We'll say you've spent only really an hour, not even with them. Don't get into heavy things like race, religion, politics. It's just going to become really emotionally charged, volatile, opinionated. I mean, let's face it. What are you having as an appetizer? And what do you think about that Israel Palestine thing? Yeah, that's not going to go well. Asking them, so, what's your thoughts on Black Lives Matter and police brutality? Yeah, that's not going to go well. That may be a conversation for a later date when you become more familiar with one another, but starting out with the heaviest, hardest, most controversial topics, it's just not a good place to be. Even if they are important topics to discuss at some point, they are not the heavy topics for a first date. They are likely to be very, very emotionally charged with very deeply held opinions, and you should be really careful about treading on to the landmine that is not a happy or fun conversation. Keep things light, hang out, have fun. Don't bring people down with negativity and drama on a first date. And since you guys have stayed this far, I'm even going to give you a bonus tip, which might seem very innocuous, but is still something to avoid on a first date. Talking about the second date. Even if you feel the vibe, even if there is good chemistry, you don't want to ask somewhere in the middle of the first date, so how about that second date? What are we doing for our third date? I mean, let's face it, at this point, what they're hearing is, so when are we getting married? Where are we going on honeymoon? What do you want to name our kids? Like, this is too much too soon. Take a moment, go home, reflect back on the date, breathe, let it breathe. Think about everything that you experienced and that you felt and that you want, and maybe take a day to let the mystery unfold for themselves and for yourself. To start admitting right out of the gate, yeah, we haven't even finished the first date and I already can't picture my life without you. That's going to come off needy, clingy, very heavy. Again, it's almost the equivalent of asking, so what wedding venue are we choosing? Well, I hope these 5 tips for things to avoid discussing on a first date have helped you well. Let me know down in the comments if you have any other things that you think are just way too much, way too soon for a first date. Let me know if you've had any surprisingly good or unsurprisingly bad experiences dropping some of these bombs on your date on first outing. I expect there's more horror stories than positive. I can't picture too many conversations about what a terrible person your ex is going well and increasing the amount of attraction felt, but maybe I'm wrong. If you guys have any questions, if you feel you need someone to talk to about the current state of your dating or romantic relationships or lack thereof, you can reach out to me at joyandsuccesscoaching@gmail.com, and you can schedule a 15-minute intake call when emailing me there, and we can start to find out a little bit more about what you need and the services I can offer you. and I'm hoping you guys have had a great weekend. I'm hoping everybody's staying safe. And I've been Coach Steve of Joy and Success Coaching of Philadelphia, and I am wishing you the best of joy and success. I'll talk to you guys next week.